Welcome to everybody. Welcome. Right now we have 73 participants. That's great. I'm very happy to welcome you to the third global session of the first GASL online MSP meeting entitled From Crisis to Action, Lessons from COVID-19 for Building a Better Future Through Sustainable Livestock. This is a global meeting with 8 regional preparatory components organized by GASL partners around the world from 31 August to 15 September. The global component is composed of the following 4 sessions as shown in the next slide, Eduardo. Next one. We had on Monday introduction keynote presentations. We had on Tuesday the regional summaries, highly interesting reports of the 8 preparatory regional meetings. And today we have the debate of the GASL Chair Position finalists. And tomorrow, Friday, we have the global closing, the global synthesis, action points, conclusions, and we will announce the new chair. Next slide, please. The selection of the chair for GASL is a process with several steps. First, an FAO public vacancy announcement, the reception of applicants, the screening of the long list, the shortlisted candidates, the nomination of the 3 finalists by the GASL guiding group, the debate of the finalists, and the final selection of the chair by the guiding group. If I'm informed correctly, we had about 130 candidates. We selected 15 finalists, which then were voted on by the guiding group, and 3 were then selected for today. Today we have 2 very distinguished candidates that as finalists have accepted to participate in this debate. Eduardo, we have received very recently a letter from the 3rd candidate, and I would like you to read this letter so that everybody knows what has happened.
Yes, many thanks, Chair. We have received a very surprising letter from the candidate, Walter Ohansamel, and he wants me to read it for you. He says, "Dear Eduardo, in this moment and considering the circumstances, let me inform you that I would like to give a step aside and offer all my support to the candidate that collects the majority of the favorable opinions to the chair of GASL. I consider I can be helpful for GASL in the future, working, for example, in One Action Network and/or contributing from any other place I could be useful. Latin America is one important livestock region with huge challenges and opportunities in terms of sustainability. I sincerely believe there is a wide set of opportunities in Latin America for a regional GASL branch. Many issues can be better addressed simultaneously on global and regional basis as biosecurity, One Health, sustainable livestock systems, research and development coordination, information sharing, exchange of lessons learned, and country experiences. I thank much to those who thought I could be a possible candidate for chairing the GASL. It has been a great honor. GASL is an especially important tool, and I commit to contribute to its objectives. Best regards, Walter Ohansamel, Uruguay." Back to you, Fritz.
Thank you, Eduardo. That means we have now 2 distinguished candidates as finalists that have accepted to participate in this debate with the intention of communicating their ideas on key GASL global topics. They both have the same goal, if they are selected, enhancing GASL to improve livestock sustainability around the world. Let me now introduce our experienced moderator, Marilena Heinrich from FAO, who has kindly agreed to conduct this debate. Marilena is Strategy and Planning Officer in FAO. She is responsible for the corporate risk management and internal controls, while previously she facilitated the strategic planning discussions that led to the strategic framework for 2014 to 17 and for the revision of it for the 2019-21 period. Marilena is a FAO internal facilitator. She has over 17 years of training and facilitation experience in various UN organizations. She holds a master's degree in business administration. Marilena, thank you very much for your support today. We are all looking forward to interesting debates. Marilena, the arena now is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fritz, and I'm really honored to be able to facilitate this very important global meeting of the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock from crisis to action. So let's move into the action. Before we do so, just a couple of rules for ensuring that this runs smoothly. Please keep your line muted all the time, unless obviously you need to speak. We suggest that for bandwidth reasons, only the speakers use the cameras. If you feel really that you would like to show yourself, we would also welcome you on camera, of course. Questions, there will be the opportunity to ask questions to the candidates via the Zoom chat function. And we will aim to address all the questions from the chat, and time permitting, we will also see if some live interventions will be appropriate. Next slide, please. Okay, with regards to the interpretation, interpretation is available in English, French, and Spanish, and can be selected in the bottom bar of your screen. Not use your built-in computer microphone, use a USB headset with integrated microphone or a wired cell phone earphones, and not okay, an external USB wired microphone is the next best solution. If several participants use, well, that's not applicable probably, but if you use one microphone, make sure whoever is speaking is close to the microphone. Connect your computer via an Ethernet cable to your router and disconnect other devices. Have your video on when you take the floor, and in a virtual meeting, audio quality may deteriorate unexpectedly and become insufficient for interpretation purposes. So the interpreters will indicate this verbally, and they will resume interpretation as soon as the sound quality permits. Okay, some info about the debate structure. So we have started a couple of minutes late, but we had the welcome and opening statements of the candidates will follow immediately after this debate structure description. And so basically I will briefly introduce the candidates, and we will ask them to make a statement, free as they wish, okay? After that, there will be 4 debate segments on a key GASL topic each. So we have segment 1 on SDGs, segment 2 on the global threats, segment 3 on multi-stakeholder partnerships, and segment 4 fundraising. So during each of those segments, we will ask a specific question to both the candidates, and they will have a specific amount of time, which is 10 minutes, to reply to those questions. And then we will also have the opportunity to ask clarification questions or follow-up questions. I would kindly ask the candidates to be as specific as possible in their replies. After this, we will open the floor to the questions from the audience via the chat function. And me, together with our back-end facilitation team, we will look at all the questions and we will try to address them by proposing them to the candidates who will reply to those questions. At the end, at 4:30, Fritz will adjourn the meeting so that tomorrow you will then know who the announcement will be made of who will be the chair for the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock. Next, please. So as I was mentioning, each candidate will be introduced and provide a 2-minute opening statement. In each of the 30-minute segment of the debate, the moderator will ask the same question to all candidates. I will alternate between the two ladies so that it's fair that once is one person responding to the question first, and then at the next one, the other one will respond first. And then we can ask follow-up questions as appropriate. The topic of the 4 debate segments have not been disclosed previously to the candidates, so they will be exposed to the questions in real time. And at the end, the audience will have a Q&A section through the Zoom chat that I will manage. And as I said, the questions will be received anytime during the debate. So feel free to use the chat during the debate. You don't have to wait until the end. After the debate, the GASL guiding group will meet privately and select the GASL chair, who will be announced tomorrow at 3:45 during the closing session. Next, please. Okay, so I will now briefly introduce our 2 distinguished candidates. So we have Ms. Fabiana Villa Alves from Brazil. Fabiana is a senior researcher at the Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation based in Embrapa beef cattle in Campo Grande, Brazil. She has a degree in animal science from Universidade Federal de Lavras and a PhD in animal science and pastures from the ESALC USP in 2007. Her most recent accomplishment is creating and effectively establishing the novel public-private initiative called Carbon Neutral Brazilian Beef, already fully operational, offering a market-feasible, science-based certification for sustainable beef production paid by end consumers, which ensures its continuation far beyond a research project or political will. In this context, thanks to her experience on the private sector prior to Embrapa and her personal communication skills, she was able to establish a carbon neutral value chain for beef. And today she leads Embrapa's largest public-private partnership involving a global level meat packer. Very welcome, Fabiana. And then we have Ms. Shirley Tarawali, who has over 35 years experience in implementing, leading, and managing agricultural, particularly livestock research for development, and has been engaged with GASL since its inception in several roles: as a participant, as a guiding group representative of the multilateral cluster, as part of the organizing committee for the MSP meeting held in Addis Ababa in 2017. Shirley also joined a small task team on the conceptualization of the current GASL action plan and was recently a member of the task group working on the theory of change. Shirley is Assistant Director General at the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI, based in Nairobi. Her responsibilities include strategic planning, corporate communication, and knowledge management functions, capacity development, oversight of the Institute's legal office, and coordinating regional representation for ILRI's offices across Africa and Asia. Shirley, I very much welcome you here. Okay, so now I would like to start with Fabiana. Fabiana, I would like to give you the opportunity for a 2 minutes opening statement, and you can say what you like. Fabiana?
Okay, good morning. Yes, I have some problems with the video.
No problem, we can hear you well. Please just go ahead, don't worry.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Fabiana Villa Alves from Brazil, and it's a great pleasure to me to be in this short list, and now together with Shirley only, but with the other colleagues with such competence. And my major purpose to the GASL is to better serve and in the sustainable food production. So the possibility to be here today for me, it's an important step of my career. And however, my first goal is to contribute to GASL with my experience. I am an animal scientist, as you told, and I work for 20 years in sustainable livestock. And I'm here to serve and to conduct the global agenda to the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabiana. And we look forward to your answers during the debate. And now, Shirley. Shirley, you have the possibility for your opening statement, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Marilena, and everybody online for joining for this debate, and to those in the guiding group who've put a vote of confidence in me for this position. I'm Shirley Tarawali, as you heard. I'm currently Assistant Director General at ILRI, the International Livestock Research Institute, based in Kenya, and that's where I'm speaking to you from right now. I am keen on this position because I really believe that sustainable livestock, have a lot to contribute to sustainable development, and that without livestock, in fact, there will be a big challenge to achieve many of the sustainable development goals. But furthermore, I think the global agenda has a significant capacity. It's added together players in the livestock sector from right across the world. And that is a tremendous resource. And the opportunity to harvest that and harness it is something that must be grasped. And it must be grasped even in the absence of COVID. But now it's especially important. We heard earlier in the deliberations this week how important collaboration and coordination is. And we see it all around us now. So I think GASL is superbly placed to harness, to add together the tremendous diversity and richness of its members now, but also hopefully an increasing number of members. And it would be a great privilege to be able to be part of doing that and building on what the current chair and the agenda support team have already done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirley. And now we can move on to the next slide, please, and the next session, which is the debate segment 1 on SDGs. And this time I will kindly ask Shirley to speak first. And the question is, GASL has adopted the UN Sustainable Development Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, as its reference with a view to 2030, so basically the next 10 years. With regards to the SDGs, what do you see as the #1 issue for the livestock sector? Shirley, you have 6 minutes for your reply, and then we can have a conversation about this. Shirley, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Now we can also see you.
And you can see me too.
Yes.
Okay, the clicks were not working at all. The #1 issue for the livestock sector with regard to the SDGs, I think it relates to being able to communicate the diversity and complexity of the sector in relation to the SDGs, one, without confusing everybody, but also without seeming to be defensive of the sector. We know that with regard to many of the SDGs, there are often very negative views about the livestock sector. And to counter those, we want to put forward a message that the livestock sector really has something to contribute to all SDGs, but especially to the 8 plus the partnership goal number 17 that the livestock sector contributes to. But how to do that without seeming to be in conflict, perhaps, with other parts of the world or different regions, different views, which we've heard about even earlier in this meeting. Those who think livestock are bad for the environment or bad for nutrition. Those things are true, but there are also huge opportunities, and we need to be able to communicate these in a very balanced and nuanced way without getting into too much complexity. So I think in that regard, one of the opportunities, if you like, is to identify some common aims. Where is it that everybody could agree we want to get to? And what are the roles of livestock in reaching those aims? If we talk, for example, about environment, we can talk about efficient and low carbon livestock production systems that can actually enhance environmental dimensions and that can be supported to function well, even in very variable environments or, for example, in the face of climate change. When we talk about nutrition, there's a message that I think everybody around the world would agree to about safe, nutritious, healthy diets, and those that include livestock-derived foods as part of the choice of those diets. If we talk about livelihoods, almost 1 in 5 people on the planet, in one way or another, has livestock as part of their livelihood. Whether you're selling in a supermarket or you're raising in your backyard, whatever it might be, and everything in between. So opportunities for everybody to benefit from those multiple livestock livelihood opportunities would be quite crucial. And that includes issues of equity and fairness as well, making sure that women and youth for whom livestock can be really important are part of that equation. And then health, that's the topic that's on top of all our minds at the moment. How can we foster a livestock sector contribution to safe animals, to safe healthy people, safe food, and healthy ecosystems and environment as well? So having some common goals, but recognizing we're at very different starting points and the trajectory to reach those goals may look different because of the diversity of the sector around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. That was very comprehensive and looking at different aspects and very interesting. So if you were the chair, what would be the #1 thing that you would actually try to address as very first one with regards to the SDGs?
I think it would relate to communicating these messages. I'm very keen and very passionate about communicating and being able to get this communication, not between us as livestock sector actors, but to those who are engaged in these wider development issues. That would be #1 for me.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Shirley. Fabiana, are you ready to go? GASL has adopted the UN Sustainable Development Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals as its reference with a view to 2030, so the next 10 years. With regards to the SDGs, what do you see as the #1 issue for the livestock sector? Fabiana, the floor is yours.
Okay, I will complement what Shirley told. And I think livestock was always blamed for environmental impacts. But we can prove that sustainable livestock is not a problem. It's a solution for the environmental complexity and for a great solution to reduce these problems and produce sustainable food. So regarding the SDGs, I think livestock is maybe the only activity that can contribute to all 17 SDGs. And for me, and I think the GASL can connect the number one issue for the livestock sector is 17, because we are a multi-stakeholder partnership, the GASL, and the SDG 17, it's regarding these partnerships. And if we don't have the academy, the industry, the government together, we can't, it's more difficult to reach the other 16 SDGs. So I think the livestock can contribute directly for every 17 SDGs and indirectly too. And for me, it's important to not see that we have best practices that can achieve all the 17 SDGs. For example, in the new normal after this pandemic for coronavirus, for COVID-19, I think 3 issues will be very important for regarding livestock production. We have the welfare, the animal welfare. We have also the safe, the quality safe of the food, or food quality. And we have also a need for more resilient agri-food systems. So I think without a multi-stakeholder partnership, to achieve those 3 points or 3 problems that we will have, it will be very hard.
Thank you, Fabiana. Thank you very much. So same question to you. What would be the very first thing that you would try to address if you were the chair?
I think I want to bring more partners to GASL. I think we have some partners that must be with us, and they isn't today. And to keep the action networks, and for example, we have a silvopastoral action network and the socio-economic aspect, and we can together reach and meet these needs.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabiana. I can see we have reached 101 participants already, and Henning in the chat, in fact, is inviting all participants to write their questions and comments. We are encouraging this also during the debate. So while we are moving through the various segments and questions, please feel free, if you have a follow-up question that you would like to ask immediately, to type it into the chat. Now we are moving to the next segment. Please, next slide. This is segment 2 on global threats. And this time, Fabiana will be kindly asked to reply first to the question, which is, food systems are threatened by the double challenge of the pandemic and by climate change. What would be the main 2 actions you would foster from GASL to face these threats of the pandemic and the climate change? Fabiana, the floor is yours.
As I told in the previous question, I think we need to improve more resilience agri-food systems, and we have now all the tools and several best practices and food systems that we can improve and we can share for all levels of farmers, from that small to the big farmers, and for all technology levels adoptions. So I would like to power this kind of systems. For example, we have agro-silvopastoral systems that can be shared and can be used around the world. And we have already all the practices and tools, as I told. But we need to communicate. We need to improve, and we need to get better links and partnerships with the governments. And I think GASL, with the support of the FAO, we can do this. The other action, I think we need to, for one hand, to act, but to other hand, to communicate. So I will foster those two issues, two questions, to communicate better what we already have. We have tools, we have practices, we have the process, and we need only to communicate and to act.
Okay, Fabiana, thank you very much. Shirley, same question for you. Food systems are threatened by the double challenge of the pandemic and climate change. What would be the main 2 actions you would foster from GASL to face these threats? Shirley,
Well, thank you. I think GASL is well positioned to be part of engendering sustainable livestock solutions for these challenges. And one of the reasons is what I mentioned earlier, the diversity of stakeholders across the GASL membership at the moment, and potentially, as Fabiana mentioned, growing that membership. We've heard earlier in the week from the regional assessments that connections between different stakeholders is really crucial. And so for me, whichever one of these challenges we're talking about, the issue of being able to connect is really important. And one of GASL's key opportunities and roles is about adding the pieces together to make a bigger whole. So whether we talk about a pandemic or the threat of future pandemics, all of us, most of us, I guess, are very familiar with the concept of One Health. And One Health demands connection within the livestock sector, which through this forum, GASL can support and strengthen and really use, but it also demands connection outside of the livestock sector, to the environment sector, to the health sector, the public health sector. And how could GASL play a role in that regard? And I think that would be critical. Within GASL itself, I think, as Fabiana mentioned, there are really good solutions, whether it's about a pandemic, but especially about some of the climate change and the role of livestock, either in mitigating greenhouse gas emissions or perhaps providing greater resilience to climate changes. There are solutions, but those solutions often remain perhaps with a research group, or they remain with an NGO who's testing them in project mode on a small scale. How could GASL foster internal communication first, such that these kind of solutions are available, accessible to stakeholders all over the world who are asking for, how do I deal with this? What can I put on the ground to really start to address this? And I think there's a great opportunity for this. It's almost like a knowledge exchange. But it's not just about research delivering to either governments or development agencies. That needs to be funded. So we need the funding agency parts of GASL as part of that. It needs to be communicated. I think some of the donor agencies, the multilateral agencies and so on that are part of GASL have important roles in gathering information, whether it's anecdotal evidence from perhaps NGO work or it's research statistics that would inform what can we do. So I think the connection part here is really something that I would focus on in terms of addressing these dual challenges. And I guess the other point to make is that although we tend to mention them separately and say, well, they're similar, they're challenges we've got to grapple with, I think really addressing sustainable livestock as a holistic approach will help us with both of them simultaneously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirley. Shirley and Fabiana, you have both mentioned connecting and communication, internal communication, external communication, connecting with, creating partnerships with governments. And those are all very interesting and very important aspects. However, when you are setting up networks, there is always a sort of driving force that has to be the lead. But then you also need the engagement from others. So the question is, how would you motivate GASL partners to contribute effectively to these challenges and to be active partners? Fabiana?
Okay, I think GASL is a large bridge from the connecting all the sectors. So if we think about these multi-stakeholders connecting and thinking together, and each one acting on their area, I think it's easier to GASL to implementing what I thought and what Shirley thought too. And so if we think in the, for example, I saw some questions about donors. I think and I really like this in my professional life. If we have a good project, we have also money for do that. So if we are able to connect and to put together and to show really what we want to do and the benefits of the livestock sector to the globe and to sustainability of the globe and of the life on Earth, I think we can reach and we can meet these donors and the money, because we are talking about money. When we talk about actions, we talk also about money to do and to implement these actions. So my opinion is this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabiana. Shirley, how would you ensure that the partners are actually active and contribute effectively to these challenges?
I think it's about sort of a value proposition that resonates with different stakeholders. What do I mean by that? I mean answering the question, what's in it for me? So if it's a research organization such as the one I work for, it's how does this help me get my research solutions scaled up, taken up, being used so that they actually deliver on sustainable development. It may also be that there's feedback to the research. What should I be prioritizing? If you're a development agent, whether part of a government or an NGO, you would want to be addressing development of communities on the ground and connecting with research solutions that you can take to scale and help you do that. So you could come with examples for different stakeholder groups to see their role within this bigger connected whole. And as Fabiana says, absolutely, by doing that, hopefully there's a cross-cutting value proposition that says, here's the unique thing that GASL can do in this regard, and that does ultimately raise more resources for the livestock sector. I think we've got a section coming up, I think, on funding, so maybe we get there as well. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. And you touched upon people on the ground. And so we have a question in the chat for you ladies from Elizabeth Katushabe. She says, what can be done to involve as many livestock keepers of the indigenous breeds as possible in the GASL process? These protect our diversity. What are your ideas on this, Shirley?
Thanks, Elizabeth. And I know exactly the breeds you have in mind, those beautiful Ancole that you have. So I'm just imagining those beautiful animals. I think indigenous diversity or diversity of livestock is one of many, many pieces of the puzzle, if you like. And so engaging people who are involved in raising, keeping, conserving such animals, I think through GASL, it helps to place them in the context of wider development issues. And that's important because telling a story that's not going to resonate with people who are interested in food security or climate change or pandemics will be harder to sell. But being able to place those kinds of issues in the bigger context of development, I think is something that GASL can do. And the question of how to involve more farmers comes up time and again. I think there are probably many, many ways that can happen, but I think the key is that we need to be quite intentional about it. So it may be that there are farmers such as Elizabeth herself who would be part of GASL. It may also be that there are farmer groups who would be part of GASL and who would be a channel to many more farmers than GASL by itself could ever reach. And I don't think either of those are, if you like, mutually exclusive. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Shirley. Fabiana, what do you think? What can be done to involve as many livestock keepers of the indigenous breeds as possible in the GASL process as they protect our diversity?
Okay, I worked with indigenous breed in Brazil with the Pantaneiro cattle, and I think we should be able to pass the information that sustainability is a complex issue. So we need to look to the biodiversity, but also to the socioeconomic factors and the questions, and also for the environmental factors. So I think it's important to improve the use of indigenous breeds in such areas of the world, but also for the commercial breeds. So we need to have this, we should have this equilibrium. So I think the indigenous breed is a very important issue, as other issues or other questions are. So the main goal is, as I told, to be able to give this information. The information that the sustainability and the sustainable livestock is not only a receipt. So we have different forms and different ways to do this and to reach the goals.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have to move on, and we will get back to the other questions that are popping up. Very interesting questions are coming up on the chat. Now we move to segment 3, which is on multi-stakeholder partnerships. And the question is, multi-stakeholder initiatives such as GASL are engaged in a continuous process of change and adaptation. With regard to the basic modules of GASL, the guiding group, the clusters, and the action networks, where can concrete improvements be made for each one of those? I think it's Fabiana's turn now, if I'm not mistaken. Fabiana, please.
Okay, I'm here. So, to be a multi-stakeholder as GASL is, it's for one side it's a good thing, and for the other side it's not a good thing, because we have different perceptions and interests. And but it's good because it creates diversity. It's essential, I think, to create a common mindset towards GASL goals, which will allow its progress and effectiveness. Regarding, for example, the guiding group, I think a guiding group is very important, because when we are together and on the meetings and at Rome and today the virtual, we can share experiences. We can share, for example, public politics that we have in our countries. And we have, for example, the government partners and also the scientific and academic partners. So this sharing of ideas, I think, is good, and it's essential for the quality of the GASL job. The clusters and the action networks, I think we can improve their job. For example, LIP is a very important action network, and we worked so hard within the guidelines. For example, for the biodiversity guidelines, soil carbon guidelines, and the others, and the AMR guidelines, and others. And I think the metrics is so important for the new normal. We need not only to communicate, but we need to prove to society, to prove to governments, and to prove to also to FAO that we have metrics. We can add value with these metrics. As I told you, I think we can improve the work of action networks, putting together. We have links between several action networks. For example, the action networks for animal welfare, I think can do a good job, and we need to talk, and we need to act more in this question. So I want, and I would like to work on these questions.
Thank you very much, Fabiana. And Shirley, over to you. with the same question. The multi-stakeholder initiatives such as GASL are engaged in a continuous process of change and adaptation. Since you were there since the beginning, you probably very well know this. So with regards to the basic modules of GASL, the guiding group, the clusters, and the action networks, where can concrete improvements be made for each one of those?
Thanks very much.
The floor is yours.
Yep, thanks. I think this is a key thing for GASL, is to be very astute in the issues that are prioritized and addressed. We know that a multi-stakeholder platform or partnership can add value, but the real added value, I think, comes in those aspects that require something a bit different, and hence the, if you like, experiment that GASL certainly started off to be. That means issues that are very often quite contentious, issues that may look rather different from different parts of the sector, issues that nevertheless require all stakeholders, one way or another, to be involved, whether it's in providing solutions, assembling evidence, or as part of debates and dialogues around those particular issues. So where are those things that GASL can add value? So if we talk about the guiding group, I think the guiding group is really fantastic and it works extremely well. An improvement that we have talked about in the past is that at the moment the guiding group is some 30 plus people. So we've got to learn how can we better balance this approach of being consensual and inclusive, whilst at the same time being able to be nimble and responsive as new issues come up. So is there another way that we could set up some of the decision making so that it doesn't take so long? It could be faster and more responsive, which we know that we need at times. If we need to communicate with the media or something like this, we might need to act rather quickly. In terms of the clusters, we know that across GASL, the representation in different clusters is not terribly even. And we know that some of the cluster groups have at times struggled to find their place and see the answer to the question I mentioned earlier, the what's in it for me. So I think being much more deliberate about that, which relates to the action networks. How can we ensure that each of the action networks, as they are now, addressing key challenges, those kinds of challenges that I just mentioned that require a multi-stakeholder approach, and that they in turn do then bring in membership from every single cluster to address those challenges. That's what it means to harness the power that GASL actually has because of its diversity, I think. So those are some thoughts there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much to both. I would say at this point we move on to the next segment 4, on fundraising. As a matter of fact, some of the participants in the chat already raised this question about fundraising. So if we see the next slide with the question is now addressed to Shirley first. And it is, although GASL has always had some very valuable loyal donors, lack of sufficient financial support has been a persisting problem since its beginning. What would you do to raise income for GASL while still maintaining its multi-stakeholder nature? Shirley, the floor is yours.
Thanks again. Yeah, I've seen several questions in the chat as well about funding, and also questions about, is there a conflict of interest in terms of who are you raising funding for? So I think that's probably the fundamental part of this is, who is it funding for? Is it funding for GASL as such, or is it funding for GASL in the wider space of livestock? We know that livestock at the moment gets a very small fraction of ODA, for example, probably 2.5% of the 4 or 5% that goes to agriculture of total ODA. So the investment in that sense in the sector is not commensurate with its potential role in sustainable development. So some of the things that we've talked about around communicating, around getting livestock, sustainable livestock solutions, and the potential of GASL to add value and ensure that those solutions actually materialize into development debates, getting them seen to be important in terms of receiving development funding, as well as research and wider funding as well, I think would be rather important. So getting livestock issues as seen as part of global solutions and even regional and national solutions to development. And then really making sure that any resources deployed in the livestock sector really do start to support the different stakeholder groups across GASL in delivering those solutions. So hopefully as part of that, some of those resources come to GASL. But my approach would be more to around raising the profile of the livestock sector, getting interest, getting resources, and knowing that as part of that, there would be more resources for livestock, more resources for GASL, and for action networks and members in their various configurations, depending on what any particular funding would be for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirley. Fabiana, the same question for you. Although GASL has always had some very valuable and loyal donors, lack of sufficient financial support has been a persisting problem since its beginning. What would you do to raise income for GASL while still maintaining its multi-stakeholder nature? Please, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm from Latin America, and insufficient financial support is our day by day. And I'm from the academia, so we have to cope with this issue for our in our job. So I think if we can deliver concrete results, as someone asked in the chat, I think we can also have more donors. For example, I'm the leader of the biggest public-private project that Embrapa has in Brazil, the Carbon Neutral Brazilian Beef. And as I told, if we have a concrete project with concrete deliveries and concrete results, I think we have also money to do that or to do this. So I think we can work hard on this, to communicate, and to communicate. So we can put all the benefits that sustainable livestock has to all mood stakeholders that compounds that is on the GASL. I think Fritz and Eduardo made a great job keeping money and donors and fundraising, and we can continue to do this and communicating what is the goals and what is the very the main goal of the GASL, because we are here in the GASL to improve the sustainability of all chain. And I'm talking about farmers, I'm talking about industry, I'm talking about also governments. I think if we have good projects and good communication, we can persist in a good way and keep more donors and sufficient financial support.
Thank you very much, Fabiana. Brian Lindsay is asking a related question, which is, he says, GASL promotes its action networks as its key deliverable for progress, though it does not support them at all financially to achieve concrete outcomes. Do you think they should be better supported from a GASL fund to better deliver for GASL? Fabiana.
Yes, I just told this. So I think we can identify what is those concrete outcomes. So it's work that we can do together. We can do with all stakeholders. And for example, we published a document from GASL this year about the SDGs and the livestock, how livestock can contribute to all 17 SDGs. I think this is a concrete outcomes, but we can also do this with specific stakeholders. So as I told, we can do this with the industry, with the government, with the ONGs, with the societies, the civil society, and others. So it's my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. Shirley?
Thank you. Yeah, Brian is right. GASL has, I think, not been supporting action networks. I think when we consider this question, it's important to remember what is GASL and what isn't GASL, if you like. It's not a funding agency. As we said earlier on, one of the real opportunities for GASL is the power of adding together to address some of these sustainable development solutions that the livestock sector needs to be part of. So the resources that GASL has, I think, should support sort of seed money to get things connected at the beginning. But by and large, the resources from GASL, I think, should not be used to replace what individual members of GASL or members of an action network would be funded for, would be anyway undertaking. GASL's role is to put resources to add those pieces together to make a bigger whole. And I know that's always been something that's quite hard to communicate and to understand, and it's quite diverse even now across the action networks. For example, because of the nature of GASL including a donor cluster, it means that there are opportunities for donors in that cluster to say, here's something we want to fund, so money can flow. I think GASL's functioning as a truly consensual, balanced, multi-stakeholder initiative would be quite challenged if it were to go too far towards deliberately funding completely action networks. We really want what people are already doing to be added together to make a bigger whole. And what are the resources we need to deploy for that to happen? And it's going to look very different for different issues, I suspect.
Thank you, Shirley. And since we are with questions from Brian, we have another one from him actually. He says, how can GASL better interact with the existing initiatives working in the sustainability space? He says, GASL, although it is a very powerful platform, cannot do everything. Shirley.
Too right. And I think that's potentially a role for members and for perhaps action networks as well, because for example, if it's another initiative in the climate change space, one would expect action network within GASL that's focused on that issue to be the one to engage, to be an interface with that. And quite possibly some of GASL's members are already part of that. So I think it's through the membership, through the action networks would be one way of engaging with wider global initiatives, and absolutely, that definitely needs to be the case. If they are truly global, if we talk, for example, about SDGs and about the level of the high-level political forum or something like this, then obviously that would be something where GASL would have a role in drawing from throughout its membership and action networks to provide really tangible examples, whether from a country or a region or a particular project that's going on with one of the members or something that an action network's delivered, tangible examples to communicate at a global level. This is what sustainable livestock looks like. This is what it looks like in Latin America, or this is what it looks like in a village in Kenya, or this is what it looks like in the dairy sector in the US, whatever it might be.
Thank you very much. This is already leading to another question that there is, but I need to give the floor to Fabiana first. Fabiana.
Okay, I agree with Shirley. I think we are well representative in the GASL. So we can bring experience for all around the world. So from Asia, from Europe, from Latin America, and we have and we know each other. We have great people and with very experience in livestock. So I think we can put together and bring those experience from the stakeholders and for the participants of the GASL. So I think the way is to bring because we don't need to create nothing to do a sustainable livestock. We have all the solutions. So we need only to put in act and to put in the field. So we can bring these experiences and put together and make a plan to overspread.
Thank you very much, Fabiana. And so, as I was saying, Shirley already touched upon saying this is what it looks like or what it should look like. So there is a question from Aimable Musio Uizeye, apologies if I said the name wrong, for both of you, of course. How would you measure the success of GASL, and which milestones would you see in short term to achieve the sustainability of the livestock sector? So in the short term, which milestones would you like to see? And now Fabiana first.
Oh, we have a lot of ways to sorry, I have some problems here. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, can we help you in some way?
No, I can't hear you, but now okay. So we have a lot of ways to delivery and to achieve the goals. I think the theory of change that goes improved and started this year and the last year is a very effective method because we can create realistic and practical targets that that we can show and we can reach. And also we can, and these targets can be measured. I think this way is a very important thing to do in this point of the GASL. Because many times I think institutions don't improve because they try to do it all at once. And doing this step by step and communicating and doing what we can do with the resources. And when I talk about resources, I'm talking about money, but also people. So I think the theory of change allows small, maybe, but important improvements. And these improvements can be the basis for other improvements. I think we should have clear responsibilities of all stakeholders. It's easier to reach the goals if we know what each other, what each stakeholder can do and need to do. I think we can have a concrete results. For me, I think this is the way. And as I told, we have different perceptions and different interests, but we are here at GASL with a common goal, that is to improve the sustainability of livestock and to communicate the benefits of this and creating value for all the chain. So I think this is the way.
Very much, Fabiana. And Shirley, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, a key measure of the success of GASL would be to have livestock recognized, sustainable livestock recognized as part of global development solutions. At the moment, we often see livestock gets left out, whether we're talking about food security, nutrition, climate change. If it appears in a negative way, and for sure, those negative aspects absolutely need to be recognized, acknowledged, and addressed. But let's see that livestock are part of the solution, not just the problem. I think Fabiana mentioned that earlier. So the measure of success for me would be having livestock recognized among the mix of sustainable development solutions.
Thank you, Shirley. And as you have the floor, the next question will go to you again now. And this is a question from Pablo Freire. By the way, we are now already in the Q&A section. Obviously, you have understood that. If you were elected to be the chairwoman of GASL, how will you solve the potential conflict of interests arising between GASL and your current institution?
Absolutely, that's one of the reasons I even applied, is because I think there's a big overlap, and maybe there would be some conflict, but I can see such a huge overlap and opportunity for synergy. That was really one of my motivations for applying for this position, because the institute I work for, ILRI, we do quite a lot of work in the communication and advocacy space for livestock, and that's very recent and something that I've been involved in leading. And we often find ourselves in a very similar space to the space that GASL is in with regard to that. So putting these together, I think, would be a really great opportunity, because it would be, again, a role of adding together to make something bigger than the pieces, if you like. So I think maybe there would be some conflicts. I think the one that we've mentioned already, potentially conflict in raising resources. I've been thinking about, well, what does that look like? I think, as I said, it's really about raising resources for the whole of the livestock sector, raising the profile of the livestock sector, and knowing that that means, whether it's for my institute, many of the other 113 or so institutes that are part of GASL, or for GASL itself, that also raises opportunities for resources. So I also think that it's an opportunity to make sure that an organization such as mine that undertakes research for development is much better connected to the development and the scaling piece, and therefore the solutions that we strive to produce can actually get taken to scale and make a difference to sustainable development. So those are the thoughts that I'd had in terms of what would be a conflict. It's something that I would seek to make into a synergy rather than a conflict.
Okay, thank you very much, Shirley. Fabiana, if you were elected to be the chairwoman of GASL, how will you solve the potential conflict of interest arising between GASL and your current institution?
Yes, it's a good question from Pablo. I think if I will be the chairwoman, I will not, my role is not to impose my perception or my interest. I think my role is to coordinate all the stakeholders. It's because we are among stakeholders, and this is a powerful to the GASL and to this chamber, because we can't impose our influence or our interest. So I think it's very easy to me, and don't impose and not have this interest from for example, Embrapa or from Latin America.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabiana. And what about what was addressed or suggested in the regional meetings, that the fact that there are trade-offs between efficiency and resilience? Would you be willing to look into this, or how would you address it? Fabiana.
Sorry, but I didn't understand the question, I think. But I will answer what I think about resilience and efficacy. So we have, yes, we have, as I told, the sustainability is it's a complex issue. We talk a lot about sustainability, but many times we talk also things that are not correct. So when I think resilience and efficiency can walk together, but it's two different things. When we are talking about resilience, we are talking, for example, systems that can cope with climate change and others. Those systems that can persist and can be efficient, because efficient for me, I think is to be economic that has how can I say, economic viability and social viability and environmental viability. So I think it's two different things, but can walk together. And as I told you, we have a lot of production systems. We have different, for example, technology levels, different farm sizes, and different opinions and different minds. So I think we have also different solutions for different parts of the world. So I think the idea of the regional global meeting and the regional clusters for me it's a very good approach.
Thank you very much, Fabiana. Shirley, how do you see the issue of potential trade-offs between efficiency and resilience?
I think the question was also about, would you be willing to address it? I think it's an absolutely fascinating question and something that should be explored, whether by GASL, by an action network, by some of GASL's members, is a question to be answered perhaps. What occurs to me is that this probably looks rather different depending on the production system. If you were to say, let's go for the highest level of efficiency, such as we might see in a US dairy farm at scale or something, and put that in an environment where resilience might be challenged, maybe there is a trade-off there. But you could also imagine that you could look at, say, a pastoral system and say, this is not very efficient because all this huge amount of land and you only get a tiny amount of milk or meat. But of course, what else is that being used for? It could be used for good ecosystem management, for carbon sequestration. It's important for livelihoods. And as I've seen many people saying in the chat, it's important often for indigenous breeds of animals. So efficiency there looks very different, but resilience would be really high on the agenda to support in that kind of environment. So those things are going to look extremely different depending on the production system that you're considering. But I do think it's something important to look at, especially now when we've been talking, if we were having this conversation last year, we'd have talked about sustainable, inclusive, efficient livestock systems probably, and we may not have even included the word resilient. But now we include the word resilient because we've seen that food systems can be very vulnerable. And so we've got to think about how can livestock be part of the resilience without compromising on efficiency. But that efficiency is going to look extremely different in different environments, I think.
Thank you very much, Shirley. We have another question on saying that the indigenous breeds have the ability to withstand endemic diseases and harsh weather conditions, survive on poor food quality, and travel long distances to access food and water. Local breeds are often seasoned with the period of milk production limited to the right season and sometimes do not breed in the event of prolonged drought. The question is, what could be done to back them up? If I interpreted the French properly. Shirley.
I think we kind of touched on this a little bit. Peguri, maybe the English was not easy to follow. When we responded to Elizabeth's, I think it was even the first question about the indigenous breeds. What occurs to me as well here is that we do have an action network that's looking at restoring value to grasslands. And I think one of the values in the grasslands, of course, is the indigenous livestock and the local breeds that are so resistant and adapted. And of course, this speaks to the point we just mentioned about resilience. These breeds of animals are are part of ensuring resilience in the future. And we know very well that there is a trade-off often between high-producing animals that require a lot of inputs and indigenous animals that may not produce so much, but may nevertheless be able to adapt very quickly when there's a challenge of heat or drought or whatever it might be. How do we balance those? And is that something we should try and balance in a single environment? Or is it something that we should look rather more regionally or even beyond? How do we make sure that we don't lose that resource, but at the same time, we're not compromising on the importance of animals for providing food production and nutrition and livelihoods. And there's obviously some complicated trade-offs in that space. So I think very right to raise it, and that we have to be quite imaginative in how we make sure that such issues, and I'm sure there are others as well, don't get excluded, whilst not, it's about mixing and balancing, the trade-offs, and recognizing and being deliberate about, perhaps we should talk about optimizing rather than maximizing. Let me end with that thought.
Thank you very much, Shirley. Fabiana, how do you think this could be backed up, the fact that indigenous breeds have sometimes do not breed in the event of prolonged drought?
Yes, I agree with Shirley. We can, for the autochthony breeds, we have also other topics that we can highlight as sustainable livestock in the context of sustainable livestock. But we can't think about only one solution. For example, we can think that using only the autochthony, the native breeds, we can reach the sustainability of the agri-food systems. I think we can think, and we need to communicate. We should to communicate that this is one of solution for a particular region or for a particular production systems. As Shirley told, we have, for example, the native breeds. We have also native pastures and rangelands, and I think the question is how to add value and how to highlight these systems and this context in the global thinking and in the global livestock.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabiana. Earlier, we talked about the possible conflict of interest, and you both actually pointed out how your positions and your institutions can actually create synergies and opportunities. There is a question from Mohammed Abu Bakar from Nigeria. And he is asking, what are the major research breakthroughs from your institutions? And how do you think they can be of help amidst the pandemic now and for the future? Fabiana.
Okay, as I told at the beginning of the meeting, I think we have to cope with this new normal. And so the livestock is on the center of this the pandemic question, because all the pandemic problem initially with the consumption of bad meat. No? So I think well, the challenge is to cope with these main issues that livestock will address. for this new future. I think we need to achieve more resilient agri-food systems, as I told. Food safety will be a main question for all the livestock chain. So the consumers are asking, and the perception of food safety will change, I think. At least the animal welfare, and we have an action network, especially with this question. So I think these 3 points must be strong in the agenda. In my opinion, this might become a turning point on demand from the society. And we are talking, and we need to talk with society, not talk only to each other, only to each stakeholder that participates on the GASL. Our goal, and our main goal, I think, and the role of GASL is to communicate to the civil society. We can't include only the farming sector, but the whole animal-based food chain, as I told, from inputs coming from the production to processing to transport and arriving and achieving the retail. So I think this is those 3 points we will need to work hard in the next 2 years. I don't know if I answer all the questions, but if not.
Thank you very much. Shirley, you stressed the fact that you were thinking about the potential conflict of interests, and that you see it more as the overlap, you see it more as an opportunity to build synergies. So what are the major research breakthroughs from your institute, and how do you think they can be of help amidst the pandemic now and for the future? Shirley.
So, yes, ILVI is a research organization. We conduct research for development. So let me just mention a few pieces that speak especially to the earlier question about pandemic and climate change in particular. Our institute, and let me not take any credit for these, I'm only talking about what our scientists and ILVI's many partners have done. Our institute has developed an index-based livestock insurance product that helps improve the resilience of pastoralists in dry lands. It works on a satellite system that measures forage. It includes engagement with governments and with private sector insurance companies, and provides a payout to pastoralists when the forage index drops below a certain level. And it's been shown that this really helps with pastoralists coping with the shock of droughts. So that's one solution, if you like, that's addressing resilience. In the climate change space, what we have here in our Kenyan campus is the only facility in Africa where we can actually measure greenhouse gas emissions from animals here in Kenya, eating the feed that they have in Kenya, and so on. And the work that this team has done has provided new figures, working together with the counterparts in the Kenyan government, that are now being included in the IPCC Tier 2 measurements. And what does this mean? This means that countries can now distinguish between figures that are valid for animals in developed countries and those that are valid certainly for parts of Africa. And they look different, and so you get different results, and you're working towards your NDCs, and that of course informs what you need to do and what your targets should be. Very difficult for a country to commit to mitigating climate change and to include livestock if you don't know what your starting point is, for example. And in particular, with relation to the pandemic, ILRI has done a lot of work with regard to food safety and informal markets. How can we mitigate the risk? Because we don't want to get rid of these so-called informal or traditional markets, perhaps we should call them fresh food markets. They're the place that 70% of people are getting their food. So we better not just get rid of them. And they have a lot of big livelihood roles as well. And we've done a lot of work in how can you mitigate the risks in these different informal market settings by looking at both risk and hazard. So something can be hazardous, but what's the actual risk and how do you mitigate that? And how do you go about it with a combination of sort of human behavior and policy change and a whole combination of things like that. And we've got some estimates that certainly in Kenya, in Assam, in India, huge numbers of people now having access to safer milk because they've adopted these different approaches. So let me just give those as a few examples, perhaps.
Okay, thank you very much, Shirley. I will continue with you, Shirley. Ilse Köhler-Rollefson is asking, she says, ILRI seems to be mostly oriented at countries in the global south. Can you make sure that you will also address concerns of the north? And I would like to couple up this question with the question of Liz Wedderburn. How do you see the relationship between the regions and the global scale of GASL?
Okay, two questions.
Yeah, I mean, they're sort of related, no, with the work of your institution and the GASL being a global.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with regard to Ilse's question, yes, ILRI's research portfolio is directed at the global south, let's say, but that cannot happen in isolation, and I think nobody needs to emphasize that too much at the moment. We've seen what's happened with the present pandemic. We're definitely living in a much more globally connected world now, and that matters. And that means that we working in the global south cannot ignore the global north, and of course, vice versa. I guess one of the other things to say in relation to that is, as part of being a member of GASL, I've learned tremendously from colleagues about the challenges and opportunities of livestock in the global north. I'll just give a very quick example there. For the meeting last year in Kansas, I was involved in preparing the background paper on livelihoods and economic growth. Now, I'd always looked at this from, as Ilse says, the global south perspective, but this was to be a global perspective. And that was such a valuable exercise for me to put this together. And it was really striking how, at a certain level, many of the issues were really quite similar. They just look rather different. And an example in the livelihood space perhaps would be, we find now, for example, chefs in New York are facing huge livelihood challenges. So when we start to talk to people for whom that might not have made so much sense before, now it resonates. So that in that sense, the pandemic's kind of united the world as well, if you like. And the other question was about regions and global, I think, yeah?
Yes, exactly. How do you see the relationship between the regions and the global scale of GASL?
Right, absolutely, yeah. As we've tried to touch on several times in this conversation, we need very real things to happen on the ground. And I think that's why we need regional and perhaps even country chapters for GASL in some cases, using similar principles. So we need those because we need change on the ground, otherwise there won't be sustainable livestock. It needs to be real and in a real place for real people. But if we're to get livestock on the sustainable development agenda at global level and to have a better nuance and balance, then we need to be there. And we need to be using those very real regional and national examples to take the message, to be part of the message that sustainable livestock can be part of solutions to sustainable development. It can contribute to resilient food systems in the future. So I think at the moment there's perhaps plenty of room for being more specific about what the regional or national pieces of GASL would look like, how they would work, how they would connect to the bigger whole. But definitely I can see that it's something emerging and something we need to pay attention to. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Shirley. Fabiana, what's your view on how the work of your institution, depending on which countries you're working in, can be upscaled to address the concerns also of the North? And the second question with regards to the regional versus global nature of the GASL. Fabiana.
Okay, I didn't answer the previous question, but I will try to include in this one. I'm from Embrapa, and Embrapa is the official research center of Brazil, and we are under the Ministry of Agriculture, and we have 47 centers around Brazil. And so I'm from the National Center for Beef Cattle, and we work in different biomes and different situations. So we have a strong acting on the beef on the national beef cattle systems, but also on the international systems too, because we have different offices around the world. Also at Montpellier, for example, in Europe, and also at in United States. So we are connected and linked with the global perspective related to the all beef cattle supply chain. And I think we don't have differences between North and South and developed and non-developed countries. We have 3 or 4 systems, beef cattle systems, production systems that can be applied with some corrections, I can say, to each reality. Because when we talk about beef cat systems, production systems, we are talking mainly and especially with the resource use. So if we have, for example, land, a lot of land, as we have in Latin America, we need to explore the systems with use of lands. But if we are in the north of the world, in the European countries or in others that we don't have land, we need to move to a more intensive production systems. And when we are talking about, when I'm talking about production systems and sustainability of these production systems, I think we need to use the tools and the process that we already have, as I told. So I think that we need to think globally, but act locally, because the systems are the same. This is the point. We have breeds and we have feed resources, and we need to combine each other to to have an efficient system and a sustainable system. So I think the efficiency of of these systems is the efficiency of the use of the resources that we have. And as I told, we have locally markets, and we have locally thoughts, and we have locally laws, and we need to combine all of these issues to have efficient production systems. I think it's my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. We have back to the SDGs question we had earlier from Philip Quiriro. He would like to thank you both for your very clear remarks. And he says, on the SDGs, you said for achievement, you would focus on communication and expanding the partnerships. How would you ensure connectiveness and coordination for effective and knowledge-based communication for achievement of multiple SDGs, concretely? Fabiana.
I think using the goals of the 17 SDG, because the 17 is very clear. Is the link between all the stakeholders. So we need to connect, for example, the research field, because we that are in the academic field, in the academic area, we have a lot of solutions to implement on the field, on the farmers, on the farms. So we need to connect all the stakeholders. For example, the retailers also can improve the sustainability of the farms, adding value, paying a premium for that systems that are committed with the sustainable goals, for example, or with the welfare questions. So I think with the goals of the 17 SDG, we can make this link, and we can make a concrete act and a concrete work for the sustainability of the systems.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabiana. Shirley, on the SDGs, as we mentioned earlier, you spoke about the communication. So the question is, how would you ensure connectiveness and coordination for effective and knowledge-based communication for achievement of multiple SDGs?
Thank you. As Fabiana has very rightly said, I think this is a strength of GASL, is the ability to connect different types of stakeholders to address issues related to one or more SDGs. However, as I said earlier, I think it's really important as well to be quite astute about the pieces that GASL focuses on, and what are those pieces that will be perhaps contentious, that might look different for different stakeholders, but that nevertheless require all the stakeholders to work together to deliver on a particular issue, perhaps cutting across more than one SDG. And the climate change one is a good one. We've got resource use efficiency. That was one of the very first things that GASL focused on. No matter where you are in the world, resource use efficiency matters. But the solution to that and how you take it to scale looks very different if you're farming in Russia or in America or in Kenya or whatever. It looks different, but you still need to have research to provide technical solutions. You need to have development agencies and civil society who work with farmers to take that to scale. You need government agencies or other donors who provide the resources and the investments that prioritize those solutions. So the adding together is, I think, key in that regard, but being smart about what it is we're targeting, that really requires this multi-stakeholder approach from the ground up as well as at global level.
Thank you very much, Shirley. There is a question on how do you think the GASL can support the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists initiative? Maybe this will help all stakeholders to understand why sustainable livestock is important in the food security. And yeah, so that's the question, Shirley. From Elizabeth Katushabe.
Thanks, Elizabeth. In fact, I was just exchanging emails on this very topic today. So, how can GASL help in that space? Again, this is a place where multi-stakeholder engagement, but also GASL's network of public sector partners could be really valuable, I think, because my understanding is the next step for the International Year would be for its approval at the level of the Committee on Agriculture. And obviously many of the public sector partners, as well as others, will be engaged in one way or another in the Committee on Agriculture, or they'll be providing information for their member representatives in the Committee on Agriculture. So an opportunity there for GASL members to provide information within the context of their countries, of their stakeholders, to provide evidence to support what would be the added value of this International Year. If it goes forward, as we hope it would, then there would be opportunities as well for GASL to be involved in facilitating dialogue and consensus among many of the different stakeholders, both within GASL and outside of GASL, that would then lead to what does the implementation look like? How is this going to move forward? Who are the stakeholders we need around the table to make this work? And I think this would be something really good for GASL to be engaged in. But I think there's also a role for some of the action networks and individual GASL members to also be involved. And perhaps by GASL's facilitation of knowledge exchange and sharing, there are opportunities for GASL members to get access to knowledge that they can then use for their member representatives in these discussions at the moment, for example. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Shirley. Fabiana, how do you think the GASL can support the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists so that all stakeholders understand why sustainable livestock is important in the food security?
Okay. So we have representatives from many countries around the world. Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, Uruguay, Colombia, Paraguay, Canada, and in each country of this country we have, for example, systems that is based on the rangelands and pasture-based. So I think we can bring we can contribute bringing these initiatives. And for example, also Pablo has a very beautiful initiative and project at Chaco, and so we can support the FAO, as Shirley told, bringing and identifying how the pastoralism and the rangeland is supporting the sustainable production of meat around the world, not only meat but milk and others. And for the second question, I want to say that there is a little difference between food safety and food security. But the two questions are based on the sustainable production systems. Because when we are talking about food safety, we are talking about the intrinsic quality of the food, and also the safe of this food, and we are talking here about the meat. So we can, for example, using controlled AMR or improving welfare, animal welfare, we can reach a food safety. And the food security is also supported by the sustainable livestock, because we can, with these systems, we can reach, and we can support we can combine we can guarantee the food for all societies. So the food security is to give food for all the people, and combat the poverty, I think. So there is a little difference between these two issues, and I think in both we can contribute with the sustainable production systems.
Okay, thank you very much. Fabiana, we have another question that is related to making, I think it's sort of related to this last question. From Donald Moore. He would like to hear more about the vision, your vision, on how do we ensure that livestock remains relevant in the current debates about the future of the food system. How will they position and lead GASL? How will you position and lead GASL to have a voice in these discussions, especially as a counter to those who seek to minimize animal agriculture? How do we create visibility of the activity of sustainable livestock in a way that parallels influential organizations such as the Eat Lancet or CSD, sorry. Fabiana.
Yes, it's a good question, because I think this is another very important subject to be addressed by GASL. Because we have this tendency of many institutions and important institutions, and also professionals, to promote less meat consumption as a key for a sustainable world. And we know that the meat consumption is the basis of a healthy diet, and is the basis of a sustainable world. I think we can and we need, and we should communicate. And here I think that the metrics that I told in the previous questions is very important, because we have numbers. We don't need to produce those numbers. We have numbers showing that and we have also, for example, articles in journals, in peer-reviewed journals, saying and showing that the livestock is, as I told, is not a problem, it's the solution. Because in many parts of the world, and especially in Latin America and also in Africa and Asia, we have livestock where we don't we don't have, and where is not able to have agricultural systems. So we are talking about more and beyond only the sustainable aspect. We are talking about the social aspect and economic aspect. So I think that this is a question that's more is deeper than the media wants to influence us and is being influenced by this the NGOs and others. So I think all that things that I told occurs because the media has no clear reference on this subject. So GASL can be and should be the reference, the global reference for the sustainable livestock. I think I will choose as a chairwoman. I think I will be work for this to bring the GASL to be a reference, a global reference for livestock sustainability, and to combat this, to fight with this issue, especially for the promotion of less meat consumption.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabiana. Very clear in your statement. Shirley, what about you? How do we ensure that livestock remains relevant in the current debates about the future of the food systems, and how will they position and lead, how will you position and lead GASL to have a voice in the discussions, especially as a counter to those who seek to minimize animal agriculture? How do we create visibility of the activity of sustainable livestock in a way that parallels influential organizations such as Eat Lancet or the World Business Council for Sustainable Development? Shirley.
Thank you. Thanks, Donald, for the question as well. I would say, yes, it's to counter, but it's not to be countering in a sort of offensive or even defensive way, but it's to counter with evidence that GASL itself is well positioned to assemble. Evidence from the science parts of GASL, which would include numbers and metrics and so on, as Fabiana rightly mentioned, but it also includes anecdotes, the stories of real lives of people, whether that's a dairy farmer in the Netherlands or a dairy farmer in Uganda, or it's Elizabeth with her Ankoli cattle or whatever it is, real stories that say, this is why it matters. This is what it looks like for sustainable development. But we mustn't just be talking about those to livestock people. We have to get ourselves present in the non-livestock discussions and debates, the places where health is being discussed, where nutrition is being discussed, where environment is being discussed, so that livestock becomes part of that. And as Fabiana said, the GASL can be one of the credible places to get information about this. As ILRI, we often say, it's much more powerful when somebody else makes the point. If somebody else is going to make the point, they need a place to get the information so that they can make their point. So having that evidence assembled in ways that GASL members, but other stakeholders across the world, if they want something to say, what do I say about livestock and climate change? Here's a place to get it. So we've got to sort of nuance that message. And of course, all this means that there needs to be very strong, not only internal connection and knowledge management and knowledge exchange, but external communication as well. There needs to be first-class products that can be used in these type of non-livestock fora, if you like. Engagement with the media, understanding how where the touch points are with the media, if you like, and also helping across the diversity of GASL, as I said right at the beginning, to have some overarching common messages about the livestock sector that all of us could speak to and about. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We have one question from Ernesto Reyes, which is with regards to the structure. The question is, GASL has discussed several times how to change the governance structure. Too many members at the guiding group, the need for an executive committee, etc. Would you propose a different structure? And if yes, how could this look like? Shirley.
As I said earlier on, when we had the question about GASL's arrangement and opportunities for improvement, I think we do need to look at something that helps GASL be nimble and responsive in its decision-making, related to the point we just talked about. If there's something in the media, GASL needs to make a point about the livestock sector, as Donald said, to counter or just to present a different viewpoint. We don't want to have a consultation with 30-something people to agree on what we're going to say. So work up front would be one, but yes, I think it would be worth looking at a decision-making mechanism that could be easier, more nimble, but to balance that with what is really working fantastically well at the moment of having such a broad spectrum of people and voices engaged in the governance and management of GASL. And obviously that's going to be a challenge for any partnership, of multi-stakeholder partnership of this nature, because you're always going to have to manage that tension. So it would be, were I successful, it would definitely be something that I would look at. But I would want to look at that with a lot of consultation with the guiding group and the membership, I think. Thanks.
Thank you, Shirley. Fabiana, what about you? Would you look into the governance structure to make some changes? Would you propose a different structure? And if yes, how could this look like?
I didn't think about this, but I can say to Pablo that we have different perceptions and interests, and I don't think that changing the governance we will change this. So I think this is good because creates diversity, and as Shirley told, we need to cope with this diversity. But I really didn't think about to change the governance and how GASL is structured, and I don't know if it's possible too. But I think we can consultate all the stakeholders and make this process if it's necessary.
Thank you very much, Fabiana and Shirley. Now our time is nearly up, and I would like to thank you for the very rich discussion, and also all participants for the very active participation. Before we leave each other, I would like to ask Shirley and Fabiana to please be very creative and make a final campaign statement. Why would GASL members have to vote for you? Shirley, please, your final statement. Why should you be the chair of GASL in 1 minute or even less?
Because I believe in what GASL is about. It's about adding the pieces together to ensure that sustainable livestock really do contribute to sustainable development.
Thank you very much. That was short and to the point, I would say. Fabiana, why should GASL members vote for you as a chair for GASL?
Okay, I want to be on video because it's easier to talk about this. But I think I want to continue the excellent job that Fritz and Eduardo made in the previous period, and I will keep working as hard as I always work, committed with the GASL goals, bringing my experiences on the scientific areas and scientific fields, but also in the public politics, and to thinking about the sustainable of the livestock whole chain.
Okay, thank you very, very much to both. Also, this statement was very, very good and interesting. May the best one of you win, or the best one for GASL become the chair. And with this, it's all from my side. I would like to again thank everyone and also the colleagues who have been supporting me in the back end with managing the questions. And I would like to hand over to Fritz Schneider for the concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marilena. Thank you, Shirley, and thank you, Fabiana, for your comments and inputs. I know we have been very hard on you with all the questions, but believe me, if you become chair, it will not get easier. But thank you, because your inputs will help us help the guiding group to make a well-informed decision. At this point, I would really also like to thank Marilena for the excellent moderation. I also would like to thank all the candidates who have taken the pain and the interest to apply for this post. Equal thanks go to Eduardo and Henning to lead that process. Now, in about 1 hour, 5:15 Rome time, the guiding group will meet in a closed meeting to make the decision, and we will announce the decision tomorrow. Tomorrow we have the closing session of the virtual meeting. We will start at 2 o'clock Rome time. We will have a global synthesis. We will discuss action points for GASL stakeholders per region and globally. There will be time for questions from the audience. There will also be a conclusions and a closing session where we will announce the new chair. Now, thank you all the participants for asking all the questions, and hope to welcome you again tomorrow. Thank you all, and bye-bye.